So what I wanted to do is on that thought of the phone call, I wanted to do a segment on these missing scientists. So I probably should reintroduce myself again. This is Jody Williams of the Astrology Academy, and true to my name, I wanted to look at some true crime cases. As I told myself, I wanted to see what was going on with the missing scientists. Is it a coincidence? Did something happen to them? And anybody that's in the group, if you have got a feeling or an impression or whatever, you want to jump in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a recording of anything we talk about connected with a true crime case and turn it over to Crime Stoppers. And Crime Stoppers gives us like an actual case number so that if anything we say is relevant, they're going to let us know. And the other reason I do that is I've been dealing with the Epstein case in a personal way for probably 40 something years, since the 70s. Okay. And I learned the hard way that when you're dealing with that kind of corruption and you go directly to the authorities, that cases tend to get buried and witnesses get hurt, as we've seen. Okay, so a friend of mine, his name was Daniel Bogdan. He was the U.S. attorney here in Nevada for a few years, and I worked with him on some cases. And I talked to him about that. Like, what do you do when like the people you're supposed to report a crime to are actually part of the crime? What do you do? And he's the one that told me about Crime Stoppers. And he's like, anything you report to them, they will investigate no matter who it is or what it is. And let me tell you, the things that I've seen reported to them, I have seen taken care of no matter who it is. So I'm really a believer in if you got something to say, take it over to Crime Stoppers. And they do give you a case number. They do get back to you. And that's the thing. If you're a psychic or an astrologer and you actually have an impression, you don't want to go to the family. You don't want to get in the middle of an investigation. Take it to Crime Stoppers. Tell them what you got to say. Let them give you a case number and let them handle it the right way. Because I've also, if you listen to some, I've stumbled, when I was young, I stumbled into the middle of some cases and got myself in the really deep mixes by approaching the family directly. Don't want to do that again. Okay, so just, report it over to Crime Stoppers and then make it an official report. So that's what we're going to do with this. All right, so what I did here, let me
Okay.
ask you this. While I'm talking, Ricky, can you do William Caseland was February 27th? Can you run this for me while I'm talking?
Sure. Yeah. Hold on. February 27th.
Yeah, 2026.
February 27th, 2026. Okay.
At 11:30 a.m.
And okay.
in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
Now, evidently, he walked out of his house, they said between 11 and 12 that morning, and then literally just walked out of the house and disappeared. Now, if you run this chart, you remember in previous classes I've said when Mars crosses the angle, that's when people get up and leave the house.
Oh,
Okay,
that's right. I remember.
right? Okay, in this chart, we see Mars 27 degrees on a 28-degree Aquarius midheaven. So that tells me, now I ran my chart for 11:39 a.m. So I believe at 11:39 a.m., maybe 11:37, right about there, when Mars crossed that angle, that tells me that's when he left the house. Now, is it important to know this? Because guess what? The news lies. Reporters get things wrong. Police give bad clues. I mean, a lot of times what you're reading in the news is going to be a lie. All right. But I know that when Mars crossed that angle, somebody got up and left the house. So I do believe that that's when he got up and left the house. All right. So do I have the right chart? Yeah, they said it that's when he got up and left the house. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is take a look and see what the hell happened. All right. The moon is at 22 degrees. Oh, okay. Guess what? Now I'm going to look within 1 degree. So I'm going to ask myself, that's why I wish I could, I'm going to have to get better at this camera.
Should I
This is
change
what,
it to 11:39 because it's showing the moon at 21 degrees on the chart I have?
yeah, because I ran it up until Mars crossed the angle, and that's when
Okay.
I knew was when he left, and it was 11:39. So that's when I think he left.
Okay, let me change it to that so that it
I'm
matches.
recording, kiddo. Okay, I hear my daughter letting the maniac dog out. All right. And this is why I use highlighters, is because, of course, the first thing I'm going to do is
There we
see, all
go.
right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see Mars crossing the angle. That tells me that's when he left. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the moon. All right. I'm seeing the moon at 22 degrees of Cancer. Now, interesting enough, there's two signs that are called the mute moon. One is moon in Cancer, the other is moon in Scorpio. Now, what mute means is he's not going to say anything, you know, and we haven't heard from him. So I mean, it's just telling me he's not saying anything. Now, that also means that he didn't leave a note. He didn't call someone, say, I'm leaving the house. So I'm also looking at this as an event. And I'm going to say he didn't say anything. He didn't leave a note. And this is when he left the house. So that's what I'm going to know on this chart so far. Now, I'm also going to look at what happened at that moment he left that house. That means, what did the moon last do? All right. Now, the moon is at 22 degrees of 02 minutes. Mercury is at 22 degrees, 23 minutes. Now, what that's going to tell me with Mercury in the 10th house is that when he left the house, he believed that he was going out in public, which is what the 10th house is, on a work-related matter. So his reason for leaving the house had something to do in his mind with meeting someone in public outside the house connected to work. So his motivation for leaving the house, but here's the thing that I'm going to say is crucial, is the moon at 22 degrees and 2 seconds or 2 minutes to Mercury at 22, 23. That's going to tell me that's a moon applying to Mercury. So that's going to tell me who he met. All right. So when he left the house and he didn't leave a note, he didn't say anything, who he met was Mercury in the 10th, which means somebody he worked with. And Mercury's going to tell me a young person. Mercury's also, as you know, a communicator. So I believe somebody called him or communicated and said, would you come meet me? That's what I think happened as to why he left the house. Now, we also see Neptune is conjunct in Saturn. Interesting, but it's not at 22 degrees. That's earlier. That's at 1 degree. All right. Now, right before, which would be 21 degrees. So before he left, sometime, because it's a difference of 1 degree, okay, I'm going to say sometime within maybe an hour before he left, I'm going to say he talked to a woman. And I'm going to make an assumption, probably his wife. Before he left, I think the last thing he did before he left the house was he talked to a woman, which I'm going to assume is his wife, but maybe there was another woman he talked to. I don't know. All right. All right. Now, what else have we got? Okay. The next thing is 23 degrees. So the moon's next aspect after he left the house and met this person, this Mercury, which is a person that I think he believed was a work meeting, we see Chiron at 23 degrees Aries in the 11th house. That tells me that he thought this person was a friend. And because it's in Aries, I'm going to say that I think he got hit on the head. Okay. I think he went out, thought he was meeting somebody on a work-related matter. That's why he didn't say anything to anybody or leave a note. And I think that shortly after he left the house, I think somebody hit him in the head. And that's because of Chiron ruling an injury with Aries. Okay, now what comes after that? What comes after that? is at 27 degrees. I see Mars Uranus from the 9th to the 12th, which tells me somebody hid his body far away. So he's gone. I don't think he wandered off and ran off with some woman. All right. Now, maybe he had an enemy. I don't know. I mean, I could go deeper into it, but before I go deeper into Stephen, I'm going to have you run another chart for me, Nikki, if you can, which is Steve Garcia.
Okay.
All right, Steve Garcia, same thing. Evidently just walked out of the house. And he walked out of the house on August 28th, 2025 at 9 a.m. And he was also in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay. So now in this case, you're going to see something a little different here, but maybe not. Because as I said, all right, is Mars crosses the angle when people leave the house. Now in this chart, we see Mars has just crossed or is about to cross the ascendant. That's another angle. So that's holding true. That tells me that's when he left the house. All right. And so the 12th house is a bedroom. It's 9 a.m. He probably got up shortly before he left the house, and then Mars crossing from the bedroom into outside, yeah, he got up and he left about that time. All right, now I'm going to look at the moon. I mean, I believe this is the right chart. I believe this is when you left the house because of Mars crossing the angle. All right. The moon in this chart is in Scorpio. Ha ha! Didn't leave a note. Didn't say anything. Mute moon. And believe it or not, this is why the older astrologers nickname Moon in Scorpio and Moon in Cancer is a mute moon. It means they don't talk, they don't leave a note, they don't communicate. And we don't know because they didn't say like, hey, I'm going to the market and I'll be back in an hour, honey. He didn't call someone and say, I'm going out. That's the mute moon. And so that also tells me they're not lying. They're not lying about the fact that they don't know why he just is gone. He didn't tell anybody anything. I believe he didn't tell anybody anything with that mute moon. All right. Now, I want to see what's closest to 7 as possible. The closest thing I'm going to see in this chart is the sun at 5 degrees Virgo. Interesting to me because that's close to 4 Virgo, which is what they call the widowmaker. I'm not sure. I think he was married. So just to me, it's interesting because the moon is going to be, it looks like, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yep. The moon is squaring the sun at 5 Virgo, the widowmaker. So what happened is when this man left the house, the moon aspecting the widowmaker. I mean, I can pull it up online, but I think he was married too. So, but it just tells me that his wife was about to be a widow. Before he left the house, we got Venus in the 10th. So that just, again, if he was married, he probably, before he left the house, had contact with his wife, probably was discussing work with his wife, something like that. Maybe, even like saying he was, I don't know, 9 a.m. he's probably going to work. So before he left, he had contact with a woman. Now, before he left, this sun at 5 degrees in the 11th house tells me that someone that he believed was a friend contacted him, reached out to him, sun being a man. So I believe a man that he thought was a friend contacted him before he left the house. All right, what is the next aspect? Mars. Okay, he left the house. Now what?